Okay, well, hey, we're here today visiting Baxter,
The Baxter Springs Heritage Center and Museum located in Baxter Springs, Kansas.
and this is Mary Billington, and I'm Larry Spahn, and Dave Wallace is manning the camera, and we're going to take a tour.
Welcome, come on in.
Let's go this way.
Well, first of all, the Baxter Springs Heritage Center and Museum is a very large small town museum. We're a little over 20,000 square foot under roof. We're a series of 4 buildings built as donated labor and time was acquired through our historical society, and they continue to build and add new things to the city as they can. Their current construction is they're getting ready to build a new park uptown. So
Wow, you're busy then.
we are very, very busy.
And you have a lot of people from Route 66 coming to see you?
We have a tremendous amount between here and our visitor center, which is also another project that the Historical Society took on, which is located at 10th and Military. It's an old Phillips 66 gas station that's been restored to a visitor center. Between the two locations, on a pre-COVID planning year, we saw a little over 10,000 people a year.
That's a few.
That is a few. That is a few. And those are just the ones that stopped during operating hours. We have tremendous, you see the pictures on Facebook and here and there of people stopping and taking pictures in front of our visitor center all the time after hours. But come on in. This is our first room, the original building.
And this is some bank, Baxter Bank?
It is. This was the Baxter National Bank. When the bank closed, the building is still located at 11th and Military on the it's on the northeast corner of the street, and the building is still there, but when they shut down as a bank, this was just set in the back, and then it got donated to the Historical Society shortly after the building was opened in '79. And it took some ladies, they spent the entire summer cleaning everything off of it to restore it to its glory.
And the brass, and I mean,
yes.
the glass. I mean, this is
and everybody loves this. I mean, we go around, we can stand behind it. There's probably 10,000 pictures of people standing behind the teller's cage. But then along the back wall, we've installed some storyboards that tells of some of the robberies in town, Bonnie and Clyde, Henry Starr.
Wow, did they visit the bank?
Now, Bonnie and Clyde did not. Henry Starr did rob one of the banks. Now, Bonnie and Clyde, what they're notorious for in Baxter Springs is they robbed Kirkendall's grocery store 2 weekends in a row.
Liked it, huh?
The first weekend they didn't get too much. Mr. Kirkendall knew that they were in the area, had been spread around, so he pulled most everything out of his till and hid it in a bag in the bottom of his coffee bean barrel.
Wow.
And so when Bonnie and Clyde came by, they didn't get much out of the till. But then a week later, his son was running the store. No heads up. They hit the store again and they took everything from the till. And the story goes that one of the boys' friends was with him, and he was so frustrated because he got so scared he swallowed his gum.
That's better than what I'd have done.
Yeah. So we start over here in this first building. We start with our Civil War story. And in the spring of 1863, the 2nd Kansas Colored Infantry were encamped in this valley. And they had been sent out on a foraging mission. They went over towards Carl Junction, so halfway between here and Carl Junction. And they knew that there was a family over there that had a large corn crop. And so they went over there to forage. Well, they were met with some resistance once they got started. Some, locals under Tom Livingston came and attacked the 2nd Kansas and the 3rd Wisconsin and killed many of them, which created the gentleman who was in charge of the encampment. He said, okay, we'll just go over and burn that community out. So the town of Sherwood was destroyed the next day, and it was never rebuilt. And, Joplin wasn't here at that point in time. Carl Junction wasn't out here. Galena wasn't here. Baxter technically wasn't here, but there was an encampment here because of the springs and the history of the military road along through here. So Sherwood was destroyed, but it created a need with the Union powers that be from Fort Scott and Fort Leavenworth that there should be a fort here. So they started constructing basically a wilderness style fort, dugout, wood walls, and that sort of thing. By October of '63, Quantrill has attacked Leavenworth, and he's heading towards Texas, utilizing the Missouri-Kansas border to hide out and go back and forth. He gets near what is now Redding's Mill, south of Joplin, and he finds out about the fort site that's here, and he decides that he's going to try to take the fort. So he comes over, him and his men, they attack the fort. There's members of the 3rd Wisconsin Cavalry and the 2nd Kansas Colored Infantry here at that point in time. The 1st Kansas has moved on and they're doing other things. So he attacks the fort site. The men hold the fort site, and it is the first known instances of both black and white Union soldiers fighting shoulder to shoulder. And they hold the fort site. Quantrill's men regroup. They discover that General Blunt, who is moving his winter quarters from Fort Scott to Fort Smith along the military road, is en route, and they attack him. And they've got him outnumbered anywhere from 3-1 to 5-1, depending on which story you hear and which report you're reading. Most reports take it at 3-1 that Quantrill's men numbered 300, whereas General Blunt numbered roughly 100. And part of his men were, a military band. Almost all of them were killed. No surrenders were taken. So hence the name, it's a massacre. Baxter Springs is known for the Battle of Baxter Springs, the Baxter Springs Massacre, and that was the fight on October 6th of 1863.
A lot of these people were buried in the National Cemetery, actually.
So what happened is that originally, the men from the fort, the few survivors from General Blunt's men, they went out across the plains where the battle had ensued, and these men had tried to escape with their lives. And looking for survivors, there were a few found, and then they brought the dead back, and they buried the dead on the north side of where the fort was. Originally. Several years later, the U.S. government was going to disinter them and relocate them to Springfield at the National Cemetery in Springfield. The city of Baxter Springs petitioned the U.S. government to keep these men here in Baxter Springs. And they dedicated a portion of the city cemetery to these men. And that became National Plot Number 2. It's under the auspices of the cemetery at Leavenworth. So no changes can be made in that cemetery section without their approval and their men on site, because it is a national cemetery. But it's a plot, meaning that only the men from that battle can be buried there. National cemeteries, any U.S. soldier and their immediate family member can petition to be buried there. In a national plot, only men of a specific battle are buried.
And that's what that is. There's not going to be anybody else buried
No.
there.
But what the city has done is the land surrounding it, they've labeled it the Soldiers' Lot, and it is full of Baxter Springs soldiers.
Well, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, so it encircles the national plot that's out there.
We'll have to go out there and take a look, Dave.
It's amazing. You've got a great collection of souvenirs, Civil War stuff here.
We have so many members of our historical society that are collectors and enthusiasts, and children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Well, I noticed you've got these fast facts that you just flip up and you get a little bit more in depth of what's really going on here. This is really something. I see your mural back here. Boy, that is
The
nice.
fast facts were originally put in here for students when they come in doing scavenger hunts and that sort of thing. The mural was created by a local artist. We've got a little bit about him. His name's Edmund Ness.
Yep.
And he started on it. We have people come in all the time. Oh, I was friends with his daughter, and I remember going by the house and watching him work on this. And
I'll be darned.
You know, his daughter is still a member of our historical society, even though she doesn't live here. But it's
Got
just,
a little diorama down here.
it's a synopsis of the battle that day.
That's what happened right,
Now, so this
a
is,
lot of cavalry.
yes, this is a synopsis of what happened that day between what happened at the fort site and out across the prairie where General Blunt's men were taken. The diorama here was created by a gentleman who works for the National Park Service at Fort Smith. And he was here for our encampment in October of 21, and he said, I do these. Can I make one for you guys?
Wow.
And he created this diorama of Quantrill's men attacking General Blunt's men out near where our high school is now. And he put a lot of work and effort in it, and we just can't thank him enough for everything he did.
This is the classic portrayal of Quantrill as not in uniform. They're kind of either cowboys or a cross between frontiermen and cowboy characters, and
Yeah, and a lot of these people weren't armed. They were band members. They carried drums and trumpets. And
So here that represents the band after they were murdered. So they were attacked, they tried to surrender, they were killed, and then their bodies were thrown onto the wagon, and the wagon was set afire, including the young drummer boy that was with them, who happened to be of African American descent.
Uh-huh.
so several of these seem to be sort of Quantrill. The man on the horse and also the man standing seems to be Quantrill there.
Well, his raiders.
Uh-huh.
And that sort of thing. So Quantrill was notorious for wearing a ragtag set of uniforms with lots of blues mixed in, stolen jackets here, stolen caps. And so you weren't exactly sure who he was when he first appeared, because there was enough Union blue mixed in with his uniforms to be deceiving. So you always had to take a second look to see, what it was, because at first glance there was enough blue that you weren't sure.
Yeah, he pretty well just shot everybody.
And that happened at Mine Creek as well. Other
Yes.
places, the uniforms were not uniform.
That is correct. Now, after the town became established, after the Civil War was over, Baxter Springs became home of a large GAR community. GAR stands for Grand Army of the Republic, which are, the military retirees of the Union Army. We had reunions here from 1883 until 1914. So they would have week-long events. The first year they were held during the fort site. In the years subsequently following that, the GAR members created a camp. They called Camp Logan. It was on the south edge of town, along the river, along Spring River, and it had a 2,000-seat amphitheater.
Wow.
It had its own rail spurs coming from the central part of town down to it. People would close up shops in town and go down there and create shops down there. And so it was this huge week-long event. One year the newspapers recorded that there was 50,000 people attending the said event. Well, the city of Joplin, to put that in comparison, the city of Joplin, when you drive into town, their population signs say 50,000 something something. So that is like the entire city of Joplin
Yeah, that's what I was
coming
thinking.
over and encamping themselves for a week along the south edge of Baxter Springs.
That's a lot of folks.
That is a lot of folks.
Notice a lot of the pictures and paintings you have on the wall. It really brings. This is another hidden gem of southeast Kansas. I mean, this
We
is
think so.
something,
We think so.
This is really something people need to come and see.
I love this headline here. Is this a banner, an advertising poster for the encampment?
It is. It is an actual newspaper print.
And that's sham battle, grand sham battle.
Yes. Yes.
I love it.
So.
All right. Well, they call them now. What do they call them? Reenactments.
So reenactments, encampments are relatively the same thing. To say it's a reenactment means that you're trying to recreate the actual event. And an encampment is just that. They are men encamped, they might have mock battles, but they're not actually recreating said event. So what we have held here the past 2 or 3 years, we've had to label an encampment, because unfortunately one of the things that you don't see a tremendous amount of in the reenactment community is men of color taking up those stories that, you know, like the first Kansas and the second Kansas. And so from my point of view, when I host these encampments, I truly can't call them reenactments, because I do not have men here telling the story of the first Kansas or the second Kansas as they were when they were stationed
Like
here in
Fort
Baxter
Scott,
Springs.
they do have a lot of reenactments and stuff there.
They do, but they don't, in this area, we just don't see that, and I've been trying to encourage that, and I would love to see that.
Well, I
What's
mean,
amazing me now, we're just coming in here, we've seen a great deal already, we're just getting to the second row. There are 3 rows in this room, and there's a whole nother couple rooms over there, plus the basement.
Yes, we have 6 rooms in total, 3 on this floor, 3 on the lower level. Each room tells a completely different story.
The mining stories in the basement, which is
It is.
where it belongs.
yep, that's it, yeah.
We have an entire area down there dedicated to that.
Actually, the last time I visited here, what I really remembered was the mining section.
So Baxter Springs came into really its own immediately following the Civil War. You saw Texas drovers bringing longhorns to market, to Kansas City area, because they couldn't take them into the Missouri area because of the threat of tick fever. So they were bringing them into Kansas. Well, guess what? The military road went from Leavenworth through Fort Scott, through Baxter Springs to Fort Gibson. So they were following the military road, which became known as the Eastern Shawnee Cattle Trail. They were following it up.
I'd like to understand the difference between the military road, the East Shawnee Cattle Trail, and the Jefferson Highway, and they all seem to run right around the same area.
They're the same trail.
Well, I thought so, but other people have told me,
Well-
no, they're different.
Well, okay, so there are different points of time following a similar path. So you've got the military road, which started, you know, very, very early in the 18s, and the progress of that. And it was designed as a supply route to Fort Gibson in Oklahoma. So through the passage of time, that supply route was also utilized as the Eastern Shawnee Cattle Trail. It was also utilized as portions of the Jefferson Highway. And then portions of it later became locally Route 66, the Ozark Trail, you know. So all of these roads, and this is a pattern that humans have.
Yeah, the railroads was a big part of it too. You know,
Yes.
I mean, they really opened up the West.
Yeah, and the railroads followed along the paths that we had already established. As humans, we tend to follow the path of least resistance.
Oh yeah. That's
So
still
if there's
happening.
already an established trail, let's take advantage of it.
That's quite a revolver.
What's that now?
This revolver right here.
And it's not real, but it looks lovely.
It looks real, but this one's real.
That one is.
The Bisley, whichever one.
You know,
wanna
and
do.
that kind of goes along with our Cowtown era.
Okay, yeah, because there was a lot of, you know, it was a
Rough and tumble.
trail
Yeah.
herd or trailhead, I guess you'd say, when
Yeah.
they were bringing them up from Texas.
You know, and there was so much opportunity coming into Baxter Springs at that point in time. The railroad came because of the cattle industry. Bankers came because of the cattle industry. Merchants came because of the cattle industry coming into town. And so there was a tremendous influx of income coming into Baxter Springs.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. So a very large building was built to establish Baxter Springs, being the largest community in what would become known as Cherokee County. They built what they would hope to be the first courthouse of Cherokee County.
I remember reading about that.
That did not come to fruition, but it is now our public library here in town. And it is a beautiful building built in the 1870s.
I remember reading a story about, I think it was a governor lived down on the river, and you could see all the way to Columbus from here. That's hard to believe. But, you know, with no trees and stuff.
At that point in time, it was very much a tremendous amount of plains. Something about fence rows has encouraged tree growth.
Yeah. Property lines.
Property lines, fence rows, they do encourage tree growth. Whereas before, it was open plains with buffalo grazing on it.
And
It
prairie
kept-
fires. And
and
stuff
prairie
like
fires, and these kept trees and that sort of thing, large shrubs, from taking root because they were taken out each year. But then we get fencing come in, and it stops that open grazing across an
Barbed
open
wire.
barbed wire.
Boy,
The devil's rope is what it's also known as.
I've heard that. Boy, this is really great. People really need to come and see this. And we're, like I said, we're just in the second row.
So this area here talks about what happened after the cattle industry died in Baxter Springs.
Another fast fact.
So we had the springs here in town that was known as a mineral springs. The early Army engineers, when they were building the military road, they called it a calubite spring,
Calubite.
which it had a lot of minerals in it. And after the cattle industry died, because of tick fever, and the Kansas legislature said, okay, no Texas cattle can come into the state of Kansas before November of the year, which killed the cattle industry in Baxter
Right
Springs.
off the bat. I can see where that would.
So anywhere east of the Arkansas River, so Wichita, Ark City, it
Yeah.
all was east of that was a no-go for the cattle industry. So that created an opportunity for places like Dodge City, Abilene,
they
and
really
Wichita
can't-
to become large cattle town. But Baxter Springs was the first,
That's
even though it didn't last long. But after that, the city leaders, they've built a large school, they've built a large building to be the courthouse. So what can they do to create money? So what they did was they marketed across the United States the idea of the mineral springs being a health spa. And that was where they
everybody
go.
wants to be healthy.
This is a little bit about John Baxter,
No,
the
it's
town the town is named after. John Baxter was living over in Newton County, Missouri, and he decided to take advantage of the fact that the military road came through Baxter Springs. And this is at a point in time when Baxter Springs and Cherokee County didn't exist. Cherokee County was part of the Cherokee Neutral Lands. It was actually territory owned by the Cherokee Nation that they had purchased when they were forcibly relocated into the Oklahoma Territory. So,
This is really something. I'm just in awe of all the stuff you've got.
so John Baxter comes over. He is a squatter because legally no white man can live in this area and own property in this area.
And that's before 1860 is the day the year when they opened it up.
Actually, no.
Go ahead.
Wrong again.
I love it when I'm wrong.
So John Baxter came here prior to the Civil War. He sets up a little general store type tavern just about a block away from where we're standing now on the hillside here, and it became known as stopping at Baxter's Place by the springs because where he built his general store was above the springs that the town is named after. So that is how the town gets its name. Now, he was killed prior to the Civil War over a land dispute, over land that his daughter didn't legally own, and the gentleman who killed him, his family didn't legally own it either. These were white settlers in this area that were literally squatters. All of them were, because they were not of the Cherokee Nation, because legally you couldn't own property here unless you were a member of the Cherokee Nation, because this was owned outright by them. So he got into a land dispute trying to get this renter to pay his daughter, and he was shot and killed. And his family kind of dispersed, most of them moving to Texas after that. And so, but it's still, everybody was calling it Baxter's Place by the Springs, and it became Baxter Springs later in its iterations.
They found that this city became a city in 1858?
Well, that's when you first saw settlers in here, such as
okay.
John Baxter and that sort of thing. The city was not incorporated by the state of Kansas until 1868. This did not become Cherokee County, Crawford County, and Crawford County to the north of us, because this was all part of the Cherokee neutral lands, until 1866. This was neutral lands until 1866, even though Kansas became a state in 61. Legally, this was owned by the Cherokee Nation until then. And then after the Civil War, and we all know that the Cherokee Nation and the 5 civilized tribes, for the most part, sided with the Confederacy. After the Civil War, it was renegotiated, supposedly, their treaty, and the Cherokee neutral lands were given up to be sold on behalf of the Cherokee Nation.
I was noticing the prices at the restaurant. I like this. 12-ounce T-bone for $2.25.
Yeah, but who had $2.25?
At a point in time when 10 cents an hour was amazing.
Yes, it puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
You know, and so Baxter Springs didn't incorporate with the state of Kansas until 68, 2 years after the agreement that this territory area be sold on behalf of the Cherokee Nation. And that's when this area legally became a part of the state of Kansas.
Okay.
Because before that it was Indian territory.
Well, I knew about the neutral lands. I had my dates wrong, I think, on the year that the federal government opened it up. You know, because the federal government had control of it while it was the neutral lands. And of course, then it was meant to be, as I understood it, was meant to be a buffer between the Cherokees. The Cherokee actually didn't live here. They could, I guess, but they didn't.
Okay.
But it was meant to be a buffer between the settlers and the Cherokees.
So Missouri became a state in 1821. When Missouri became a state, the Osage Nation was relocated to their first reservation, which would have been west of here. What is now known as Cherokee County and Crawford County, and about the first mile or so of Bourbon County, was created as the neutral lands to separate the Osage Reservation and the state of Missouri. And Missouri was a slave state, remember this. So you had this buffer zone that no one was supposed to live in. It was a no man's land. It was empty. No one was supposed to be here. But then the relocation of the Cherokee Nation happened. And the Cherokee Nation had to purchase their reservation lands in the Oklahoma Territory. Well, part of the lands that they purchased was this neutral lands here in the Kansas territories. And this became part of the Indian Nation at that point.
And what year would that be that they purchased it? Around?
When was relocation? Now that date, for some reason,
I see. Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears, 1830s, I do believe.
Okay.
So when that happened, the Cherokee Nation bought this, and this became part of the Cherokee Nation reservation lands.
Hey, Dave, here's your trucking. Dave used to be a over-the-road trucker. There's one of those.
So that is Yellow Freight. Yellow Freight
Was big in Baxter for a long time.
Yes, they still actually have a terminal here.
It's still there.
And it is mostly, the terminal there is mostly a maintenance building and that sort of thing. It is not at the hub that it was through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
We have a couple of Weirites who were mechanics at the Baxter.
Yeah, Donnie
Yep.
Harris.
But
And Huff.
so in its lifetime, Yellow Freight has had 3 terminal buildings here in Baxter Springs. One is just a few blocks west of Military on 12th Street. One was there. It's no longer there. The building's completely gone now. The second one is up near where, across from Casey's, so to speak, where the large old tire building was. And then the current building, which is just west of the Casey's place. And
A
but
lot of history down this way.
tremendous amount of trucking history.
Well, then you get into
and that goes with Route 66.
Then you get your lead and zinc mining and the strikes and all the labor conflicts, and there's just so much to know. And
There
a lot
is.
of people don't. They don't even
There is.
realize what's around them.
I've been here a part of the museum for 6 years now, 6.5, and the history, it just is overwhelming how much the Crossroads, Baxter Springs created, changed history in this area. You know,
There was a deal when they was opening up Oklahoma, the Indian Territory, the first railroad, the railroad race between the Katy and the Frisco, or the whatever railroad it was back then. Memphis, Fort Scott, and Gulf, or whatever.
Yes.
But they tricked them into thinking this was where in the Indian land, and actually it was 30 miles that way.
Well, in theory, when they got to the south edge of town, they were technically in Indian Nation, because the Cherokee and the Quapaws owned about a mile this side. So in theory, they were actually there,
But what I read, and you
but
can-
they
you correct me,
didn't quite.
They had a certain area that they had to be at, and
Exactly.
it was over there. It was the wrong river.
Exactly.
They thought
They were-
here's the Spring River, but they needed to be on the Neosho River.
The Neosho River, yes,
And that was at Chitopa.
yes.
A lot of history, man. You've got so much stuff.
And the Neosho and the Spring, they meet about 20 minutes south of here in an area near Wyandotte, Oklahoma, and they create the Grand River, which
Grand
got
River Dam.
which got dammed in the 50s and created Grand Lake, which Grand River Dam is the longest multiple arch dam in the world
I'll be
at a
darned.
mile and a quarter.
I didn't know that.
Here's your schoolroom right here.
This is something, we was up at Mound City and they had something similar. They had the whole building. But
This is a schoolroom. This is pieces taken out of the old Lincoln School building, which was, the multi-story school building built in the 1870s. And
excuse me, I'm just looking to see names carved in there. I was going to carve mine. I went to a school that had these kind of desks. I'm dating myself, but the big deal was to take your compass and scratch your name in there. I remember I was doing it so nicely, and the teacher got me with her ruler.
This
got
looks like something out of the bank lobby.
it is. This is the teller's desk that goes with the bank counter that's up front.
Okay.
It's in the picture that's behind the bank counter. There is a picture of the gentleman and one of the ladies that were bank tellers at that point in time, or bank clerks as they were called, and sitting around this.
I'll be darned.
Baxter High School.
I see.
Gentleman's jacket.
I see something here. I remember I was about in the 3rd grade, and the teacher'd ring this bell when recess was over. So I thought, if the bell has to, I hid the bell.
Recess can't end.
Well, let's just say
Did-
punishment was swift.
Yeah. Did you have a little trouble walking home?
Yeah, well, I didn't tell anybody at home what I'd done, but
Because you'd have got it twice.
yeah, you bet that's the way it used to be.
That is the way it used to be. If you got in trouble at school, you got home and you got in trouble at home, and you might not walk right for a few days.
And yeah, right. We had one teacher, she'd make you go out and cut your own switch. So
I had a grandma that would do that.
so I went out and did I got one about this long. That didn't work either.
No, because if she had to go get one,
We did.
you were on.
We did, and she, yeah.
And this is the bell out of the Lincoln School building. Another one of our fast facts about it. And then over here we start our World War I display
Oh my.
and the artifacts that go with that. The war to end all wars, the greatest war. And, so what most people don't know, though, is that the Spanish flu killed more combatants in World War I than they actually killed themselves on the field of battle.
I didn't know that. The Spanish flu.
Yes.
Now we've got COVID.
Now we got COVID. And, so many
And
people.
it was misnamed the Spanish flu in the same way we can call COVID the Chinese flu. It was, where did it first appear? In Kansas, was it not?
So the first known status of the Spanish flu showing up in the United States was at Fort Riley.
Yeah, Funston then.
It was Camp Funston at that point in time in Kansas. A gentleman from the western part of Kansas was at Camp Funston and he got sick, and that is the first known recorded case of the Spanish flu in the United States.
From there it took off.
And from there it took off.
Man, I'm just
I
overwhelmed with what you got.
had a great uncle who died of the Spanish flu.
And so we have facts about World War I, facts about the Spanish flu.
There you go, read quick.
You gotta-
So,
Holy cow, there's a lot here.
so this is our original
There's another
building.
room back there?
Then you got a basement down here.
Yeah.
So
So this is our second building that was built when funds were raised, and we kind of, each room, when we're describing them, we give each room kind of a nickname as to what the first thing you see. So that's our Civil War room, because the first thing you really see is Civil War. This one we kind of call the Victorian room, because the first thing you see is a Victorian parlor.
look at that organ.
Yeah. And that is one of 2 pump organs we have in the building.
But you remember when that was? Do you remember just getting it to Baxter Springs from
Yes.
wherever they made it? You know,
Yes.
wagon trains.
So
and
one of the fun facts when I'm doing school tours is that there are 2 chairs in this room. And one's a ladies' chair and one's a men's chair. And the kids, they almost always get it wrong. But which is the men's chair and which is the ladies' chair?
Well, you would
This
think
is a
would be
man's
the
chair.
men's,
This
and
is a-
would be the woman's.
Yeah, this is a man's chair because of the footstool. Wrong or right?
You are both wrong.
The middle one's a man?
No, this is a ladies' chair. Look how there are no arms on it, because at the point in time, women still wore hoops and bustles and that sort of thing, and there was nowhere for to place them. But if she put her feet up on a small stool like this, that created a lap area for her to do her needlework and knitting and that sort of thing. Whereas the men's chair would have been a wingback or an armed chair. And so he could lean back, prop his arms up, smoke his pipe. But this allowed for the ladies' skirts.
I'll be darned. But did they wear those every day, or they just wear
Yes,
them?
in the Victorian era, if you were
Every day.
if you were a lady of quality, yes, you did.
Oh, you mean money?
Yes.
Okay, you had other
know-
people doing the work.
You know, but even your staff, they wore a modified version of
Really? I didn't know that.
the hoop or the bustle. They wore a modified version of that that worked with their uniform.
And here's another little piano.
And this is the same thing as.
This is a box grand piano.
Gee, what's that thing weigh?
Not as much as you think, because I've moved it.
Oh, really?
I've pushed it.
Okay. All right.
You know, but not very much. We've had to roll it out of the way just a little bit to accommodate moving something else in the building. But down this way we have,
Here's a bedroom,
you know, and this
a
is,
chamber pot.
yeah, and it's got the full set of chinoiserie
Yeah,
ware.
I see it there. Yeah. Oh boy, the good old days.
Absolutely.
That's when you went out to the outhouse if it was real cold. in a
So
hurry.
for the most part, chamber pots per se were only used at night or in cold weather. So you didn't have to go outside during the middle of the night. And so they weren't utilized a tremendous amount because,
Well,
you know, they
well, you
just weren't.
start
But
to use
still,
your-
it was something to have.
Well, just use your imagination how you're going to use this and where you're going to use it. It's just, you know, it's a mental picture that really isn't.
You know, but they were a fact of life.
I know.
They were a fact of life, and, you know,
That's part of it.
it's part of it, much like when you go camping.
I don't do that anymore either. I like sleeping on
So we have an area dedicated to
quilts.
the history of quilting, the different machines that would have been at different eras. We've got spinning wheels. And my favorite sewing machine in the building is this small steel one right here. The small cast iron sewing machine.
Uh-huh.
Can you imagine the convenience of moving west at a point in time where you're in a large wagon and your entire household has to fit in that?
And the power is that little wheel that you turn by hand.
Yes. That is just one of my favorite sewing machines in the building.
Very good.
For the simple fact, the story it tells by just the fact that those were being sold and those were being chosen to come west.
I remember my mother had something similar to this that
Oh,
she
yeah.
used for years.
Yes.
And these are the kinds of things that led to the advancements in mechanism and building gears and
Oh,
thing.
absolutely.
They did this for sewing, for protection of clothing.
Helen Hayes. This is not the Helen Hayes, the actress, is it? Okay.
No.
But look at all the stitches. I mean, every one of those is so.
The
I don't-
quality of hand stitching is just amazing.
Oh, it'd be enough to drive you crazy. And the double wedding rings and all that. It's just wow.
And that's probably the most well-known sewing pattern out there is a double wedding ring.
Look at all the pieces, all those triangles.
Absolutely.
Oh, and there's hand sewn. I mean, this is oh. And then you get into the crocheting. Now this is
That's a little different. We've got crocheting, we've got tatting, we've got lace. So all of these were hand-done items that tediously,
oh yeah.
painstakingly done. And look at the design in that.
Well, look
And that
at
was
that.
all hand done.
I look at the eagle and the Statue of Liberty and the eagle over here and the shield and the
And you call this lace or knitting?
Now that is a crocheted cloth. You know, so that is crocheting, but it's in a thread instead of a yarn.
how many feet do you reckon's in there?
Quite a few.
Yeah, boy.
Because each little square's probably got about 12 to 20 knots in it.
And you look at this little one here. Look at the handwork that goes in that little lace scarf.
On the Battenberg,
Yeah. I mean, wow.
But I'm looking at this dress up here, this black dress. How is all that around the collar done? All the what do they call this around the neck? And,
Lace work or
yeah,
whatever you
all
want.
that. Boy, that's amazing.
absolutely.
And on the arms as well. That is one.
And it is all either hand knitted or hand crocheted, depending on what the user was doing. More than likely, this is knitting because of how tight they are.
Man, can you imagine finding the time to do this? Because a pioneer woman, she raised a family, she did all the stuff, and it was just hard to believe that they found time to do it, and they didn't have electric lights.
No.
Ugh.
Well, and sometimes this was done with help, other family members, female friends, and handed down. So, you know, you might have grandma's dress that's handed down that has a lot in it that you just actually hand sew pieces of her dress into a new dress for yourself.
That's good.
So repurposing material and dresses was very much done. You know,
Well,
mom,
it was a big deal just to get a button. You know, I
you
mean,
know,
it was.
mom might cut down an old dress of hers for her daughters.
Mm-hmm.
It was too worn out on the elbows and that sort of thing.
Make it smaller.
But she would take the skirt, which had many yards of
Yep.
material, and she could make new dresses for her children.
I remember my mother, you get feed sacks and you could pick out your patterns, you know, the 50 pounds of seeds. And the thing is you wanted to get enough to finish up what you had.
Well, do you know that women using feed sacks, the cloth of feed sacks, created the printing industry for the feed sacks?
No.
So they were using, you know, these
Just the
millers.
regular- yep.
These millers were noticing that these ladies were repurposing the feed sacks just as fabric, and so they started putting prints on them to entice the ladies to buy their particular type
I
of grain.
remember going into the mill at Weir, and my mother, they have it all stacked up.
Exactly.
And she'd be going through there naturally. The one
Exact-
she was right there, but she'd insist that's
But-
what she wanted.
But women repurposing feed
Yep.
sacks
Caused that.
created them to print them to entice the ladies to buy their grains.
That's just good merchandising.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh man, what,
So you have any printing equipment? One of the things that always fascinates me.
I have I have a typeset downstairs. I don't have printing equipment, but I do have a typeset in the press room
I was
downstairs.
looking at your sewing machine. I'm impressed by the technology of the day that created that sewing machine. And a lot of that kind of technology was developed in the printing industry as well.
look at that radio.
Absolutely.
A little bit.
So
my mother had a chair like this.
So during-
whatever this is.
during World War II, the rattan.
Rattan, that was it.
During World War II, the radio played a key element on the home front. People would sit around, listen for the news releases and the stories that were coming across. I mean, much like we, sit around and watch the evening news,
Yep.
they would sit around and listen to the radio.
Yeah, I remember listening, the Lone Ranger
And the ball
whatever,
games
and all that stuff. But the REA electrified a lot of the rural communities. But up into the 40s, they had batteries.
And we do have a battery radio around
Do
the
you?
corner.
I'll be
Yes.
darned.
So over here we move into our World War II display.
Hey, looky here. Ooh, a commander's uniform.
We have a tremendous amount of World War II uniforms
You
for both the
do.
men and the women.
Well, Dave and I were in the Navy, but we were enlisted. And just looking at the
This is, that's a whack, that looks like a Navy, what do we call the girls?
waves.
The waves. Doesn't that look like a woman's suit?
I
It
believe
is.
It is.
It is. The label's right there on the front there if you
And
want
see
to catch that.
See that eagle on the lapel? That was known as a ruptured duck. And that's what, basically, there's a little pin that, if you went through World War II, you put that on your uniform and you could wear that pin. But they called it the ruptured duck. Now, I don't know where that come from. But,
I don't know.
But there's a machinist mate first class. The stripes, when I was in the Navy, they call those idiot sticks.
Which ones you talking about now?
Oh, the
The white
white
uniform.
uniform with the first class stripes on it.
Oh, okay, you've got the propeller on there, you got the.
And then those two strip, what those are. That's 4 years of service, each one of those stripes.
Sure, he's got 8 years at least, up to.
Yeah, and he
not
was
12.
into his 12th, I guess, or he got out there and said to heck with it. But yeah, we called them idiot sticks because we weren't there. We were there for 4 years.
So this all talks about World War II. And then we got a little bit of Korea, Vietnam, the communism and hype of the 50s is over here. Just that whole conflict of that era, some of the ideology of how women were dressing at that point in time. Jackie O's very much iconic look in the fashion industry.
Been a long time since.
As the wife of a president, she was probably one of the most iconic figures to influence the fashion industry from a political standpoint. I mean, because everybody wanted to dress like her.
Yeah, they did. She was very.
Well,
She had a lot of poise.
after we'd had Eleanor, and
Yep.
we'd had Beth,
Yep.
and we'd had
Who were very
Mamie,
much, Mamie, yes.
Mamie, yeah, and so she was a much younger first lady than
She
we
was.
had had.
She was much younger. She had a very elegant sense of style, whereas these other ladies who were just fabulous women in their own right did not pander to the fashion industry.
No, there was a different attitude towards
Yes,
the
but
the idea of
well, you're talking about women who were raised through the Depression, who
that's
through
right.
World War I and grew up from parents from World War I, lived through World War II. So there was more of a sense of repurpose and reuse through these women and the way they were raised versus what Jacqueline Kennedy had.
The attitude towards anybody who became famous was a whole lot different thing.
Yes.
Now it's looked upon very, very good. Oh, that's a good thing,
And a hula hoop. I
Then-
remember the hula
Yep,
hoop.
the toys from the 50s.
Yeah, oh boy, the BB gun and the skateboards. Oh my, the portable typewriter. That was just really neat. Lot of memories here. Brings them all back. You've done a wonderful job keeping this, and it's clean. There's no dust. The
We
floors are looking good. You've got a real nice place.
Yeah.
And it's easy to, you follow
the map.
the map and you can go right on through it. But
Yeah.
I know that you probably do tours for groups, but we really appreciate
do.
you taking us
We
around.
do schedule tours for groups for the most part because unless it's a very small group,
Yep.
we like for the tour groups when they come in to just enjoy themselves through the building, take their time, they split up and just wander. And occasionally we'll have a smaller group. For the simple fact that, like in the first room, you saw how the aisles are kind of compact.
Yep.
You get more than 5-10 people in a group and it's just overwhelmingly crowded and no one's really comfortable.
Yep.
So it's easier to just let them disperse amongst the building and just enjoy themselves. So here we have a display of women's fashions, different wedding dresses,
the morning gown,
the widow's weeds,
widow's weeds.
you know, different wedding dresses through the eras, something from the Victorian era. During the Victorian era, it was very common to make pieces of jewelry
Hair.
out of hair. And this is a wreath made out of hair.
Look at that.
And just look how intricate those...
Yeah, those are little roses and flower buds in there. And
Is that-
Christmas.
Is that not amazing? Yes, it is. And it was very common to utilize hair. Most women, when they brushed their hair out at night, they would keep their hair that was in their hairbrush and put it in a special box on their dresser, part of their dresser set, and just enjoy, you know, use it later.
Oh,
And do things like make, you know, what literally it was called a rat, because they would rat all that hair together and make it a hairpiece to fit under their other hair as they pushed it up.
Something that's changed a lot in our, you know, our daily life. You used to not throw anything away. You recycled.
Exactly.
It was recycled. We were recycling long before it became a thing.
It was reusing.
We reused it and used it and used it again. Now we're a throwaway society.
This is an aerial view of Baxter Springs in 1965. And we are located right in this little circle right in here. This is where we are located. This is 8th Street. This is Military. Our visitor center at 10th and Military is located right here. And the post office building here, the old City Hall building here. So
66 highway is.
this is Military, so it's also Route 66 as it goes out of town to where the drive-in movie theater was.
I figure this is the railroad tracks.
It is railroad tracks.
Heading over, and you can see those lead and zinc operations off there, over
Yes.
towards what, Commerce, I guess, whatever.
This
Picture.
Picture.
This looks like this is the Galena Depot. Is this the MKT here in Baxter?
No, that is in Galena.
That's what the museum's made of over there now.
Yes. And Baxter and Galena have quite a few ties to each other because of the, you know, the lead and zinc mining, the different families that have, you know, grown up together and intermarried with each other.
There's a lot of inter-school rivalry too.
Oh, a
The football
tremendous
games,
amount.
oh, I mean,
Tremendous amount.
It'd get mean out there on
I
football
mean-
field.
I mean,
Galena Bulldogs and the Baxter Springs Lions?
Yeah.
yes. And then the Riverton Rams right in between.
The Riverton Rams.
So Route 66, as it goes through Kansas, is recorded as having 13.2 miles of road surface from the Missouri border to the Oklahoma border. And in that 13.2 miles, we have 3 school districts. And, you know, so there is a lot of rivalry when you get schools that closely together.
And back in the day, I hate to use that term, but there was a lot of kids. There's a lot of there's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of work down here.
There was.
Looky here, electric train. Telephones, I remember those things.
Yeah, that's something I've started collecting since I've got here, is putting out different phones. And I've got several at my house that I need to bring in.
Now, are these elephant tusks?
They are.
And these are from the old days when they used to collect them.
Yeah, the gentleman pictured in the front was the one who acquired them through a hunt, and he had multiple sets of them.
Really?
And the family, what do you do with the elephant tusks at a point in time that they are outlawed in the United States?
You know,
In a point in time when people are understanding that
yeah.
the thought process at that point in time wasn't the best for preservation in the long term.
No, now I think of the animal that had to die.
Exactly.
You know,
But
they
what
shed
what
them.
do you do with something like this? You can't sell them legally.
No.
And so you donate them to a museum so that they can be used to talk about and, you know, explain the animal's strength and why we
Did you have
want
to
to
get
preserve
some
them.
sort of special permit to
No.
have them?
No.
Being
Is that they were acquired through a hunt prior to the outlawing of said hunts.
Man, that's a how
Yeah,
old
we've
that-
got a
how old's
lending
your break room?
a break room,
Yeah, okay.
little lending library for our volunteers.
All right, good. We
Outstanding.
got another room over there before we go downstairs, don't we?
Exactly. And see, here's our battery-operated radio that I was talking to you
Yep.
about a while ago.
Had little dry cells in there.
It did. It did.
Yep. I remember those, and they didn't last very long either. You had a special time when you listened to the special shows that Mom and Dad wanted to listen to.
Yeah. Yes. So this third room was added onto the building the same time as the solarium was up front, and we call this our galleries room
Wow.
because we have an art gallery down here. We have a gallery dedicated to the Native American story
And
here.
more arrowheads.
More arrowheads. We have a gallery over here dedicated to the African American story in Baxter Springs. We have Route 66. We have music. We have baseball. And we have a little bit of Mickey Mantle.
Wow, I remember him. Baseball cards. I wish I'd have kept a few.
Where's your baseball stuff?
Down, just straight forward.
I gotta see that.
I mean,
He
they
was a hitter. He was a hitter.
and
But
right down there at Commerce is where he played baseball.
so he grew up in Commerce. He was born in Spahn, Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
Grew up in Commerce. But in his high school era, he was playing ball here in Baxter Springs for a team known as the Baxter Springs Whiz Kids.
I didn't know that.
And the Baxter Springs Quiz Kids utilized the ball field that was where our Kiwanis Park is now, adjacent to Spring River, right
Okay.
down here,
I know where that's at.
just at 12th and Spring River. He played on the ball field that was down there. And the scout for the Yankees was here actually looking at somebody else. I mean, what he was playing on, the Whiz Kids, they relate to what we call a high school travel team now,
Uh-huh.
where you've got boys from different districts playing on one team and they travel a lot. That's what the Whiz Kids were doing. But they were, a very talented group, But the scout was watching this team for another man on the team, another young man, and he realized how well Mickey could hit the ball. I mean, he wasn't called the Commerce Comet for nothing.
Nope.
And when he turned 18, he signed his first major league contract with the Yankees, sitting in the scout's car down here at Kiwanis Park next to the ball field.
How
Wow.
about if I take a picture of this side of the display and that?
Yeah.
I will stay off that picture. They wanna
Yeah,
keep
they,
their copyright on.
but Barney Burnett was the coach of the Baxter Springs Whiz Kids. Him and Mickey had a wonderful relationship, and when Mickey, after he signed his contract, he played a season at Independence, Kansas, which was a farm club team for the Yankees. He went to Joplin, again with the Yankees. Went to Kansas City. Had a terrible slump when he was in Kansas City. Each time he moves, he's up a rung on the ladder for the Yankees. Got into a terrible slump in Kansas City. His dad went up and talked to him. He said, if you don't get your head squared on straight, you might as well come home and be a minor like I am and my dad is. And Mickey never thought he would do anything but be a minor like his dad and his grandpa. So he, schooling wasn't hugely important to him. Baseball was. And so he worked it out, got out of his slump, and while he was doing so well in Kansas City, he was called up to New York and played the rest of his career in New York. But while he was there, New York, from what I understand of the story, the club had gotten new uniforms and were going to throw the old uniforms out.
Really?
And Mickey asked for those uniforms, and they were stripped of all of their insignias, and he acquired them for the Baxter Springs Whiz Kids. So the team just had to pay for
The shipping.
well, Mickey brought them to him, but
Oh.
had to pay for the insignias on them. And this right here is one of those Yankee uniforms that was rebroadcast as a Baxter Springs uniform.
Wow, ain't that looks nice.
And they were the Whiz Kids, WK.
Whiz Kids, yes.
Oh
Oh,
my.
that's nice.
Yeah, baseball was a big deal. When I was growing up, I played on Weir American Legion team, and we traveled around. But
Yeah.
and there was a lot of that, but it just seems to be going away.
It's still there, but it's in a different format.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't do a travel league. It's travel tournaments. You're
Yeah.
always going to another tournament as a travel team. And so instead of having a travel league with, that sort of thing. They've got travel tournaments now. But it's still the same concept.
Thomas Hart Benton, he's another famous individual from this area.
He is.
He is,
As is Wyan Sims. Most people don't realize he's from here.
no, I didn't know that. I think wasn't Benton did the mural in the Joplin City Hall or
Yes.
Post Office, and it's,
Yes,
that was
at
one of
City
the
Hall,
last ones,
yes.
one of the last ones, I think.
Yes. But Wyan Sims, that is his guitar, and his daughters come in periodically, and it's on loan from them.
Well, I can understand them wanting to keep it in the family, but this will, it's sharing it with the people. And
Oh,
this
yes,
is,
and
this
sharing
is,
his
this
story.
is the place, because this really,
Sharing his story.
yeah, boy, I guess. And
So this tells the story of the African American story into Baxter Springs. Following the Civil War, Kansas was opened for homesteading. But you remember how we talked about the Cherokee neutral lands and that this area was to be sold on behalf of the Cherokee Nation. There was not homesteading here. But you saw this huge influx into Baxter Springs of people of color out of the Tennessees and such looking to homestead lands, only to find out that lands were being sold here. And so they kept moving further and further into Kansas looking for places to homestead and to be welcome. And this became known as the Exoduster movement because it was this huge exodus of people of color out of the South into Kansas.
and
And they called them the Exodusters.
Exactly.
well, they also made a name for themselves as the Buffalo Soldiers.
So when you have the men from the 1st Kansas Colored and the 2nd Kansas Colored, and these started out as volunteer groups that were incorporated as Union regulars, these men were utilized after the Civil War to help fight and control the Plains Indians. And that is where they got
The Buffalo Soldiers.
their terminology as Buffalo Soldiers. And
More history.
yes, but soldiers of color were not termed Buffalo Soldiers until after the Civil War.
Yeah, that was a unique part about that too.
Yeah, many people want to come in and talk to us about Buffalo Soldiers. Well, we had no Buffalo Soldiers here in Baxter Springs. We had the 1st and 2nd Kansas Colored Infantry, and they were not until many years later did those troops evolve into what would be known as nicknamed the Buffalo Soldier.
Look at this quilt. I mean, look at the small pieces in this quilt. I mean, that's enough to make you go blind. Each one of those is cut and sewed in all the way around. Each one of them, Jiminy Christmas.
We have a
No
mining
arthro-
history up in Cherokee, up in northern Cherokee County of the
Coal.
of the blacks in the coal industry and how they were brought up here from Alabama, and there were flyers out trying to get blacks to come up, and they'd get up here and they'd come up, they'd come up to get a job. They were promised jobs in the mines. They didn't know they were breaking strikes when they came up, and that's what they were using them for.
Exactly.
And it turned out that after they found out what was going on, the blacks joined the unions in the same numbers as the whites. About 60% of the miners were in the union.
Yep, and they were hardworking people, and still are.
So right here we have, so most people don't know the history of the American Legion. The American Legion was established by retired veterans of World War I. But it was just as segregated as other places were in the United States. And even though Baxter Springs had an American Legion post, the men of color who fought in World War I were not allowed to join the American Legion. They had to create their own post.
Oh, but I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so this Sunflower Post was for the men of color. And that was a separate post from the American Legion that exists today. And as Baxter Springs grew through its many, ups and downs, as it ebbed through those, the people of color kept moving away. And now we do not have that same population here. And the last known member, Orville Barnett, when he got towards the end of his life, he was the last member of the post.
That was it.
That was it. So he donated his items that he had from the post here to the museum.
And the black population here dwindled as mining died out.
As mining died out, exactly. But then again, the whole community's population dwindled as the mining wore out and different forms of industry came into play. And so you saw this ebb and flow with the entire population and with the economy as well. And now Baxter Springs is coming back around. We've got more industry in Cherokee County than we used to be. The school districts in Cherokee County are some of the best in the area. And so you see people moving into this area because of these items, the new industries and the fact that they can get their kids into great schools.
They're building everywhere in Cherokee County and
Absolutely.
Crawford County.
Absolutely.
There's a real boom going on right now.
I mean, housing is at a, as a nation, we're at a housing crisis.
Notice
And
this says, and rifle, the rifle's not here, is it?
the rifles are downstairs in a
Okay,
secure
well,
area.
let's head on down there, we're
Go
gonna use
down
up
and
your
see
whole
that
day.
mining display. I really like that when I
This
saw
is
it.
our Route 66 display.
Yep,
Our Native American story is shared here.
oh my,
And then we have an area dedicated to local artists over here. And many of them are nationally known artists.
and then, wow, look at, hey,
We've got Carol Riley, we've got, all of these area right here are,
look at, this is a museum all by itself.
yes. We've got Fred Deaver,
And look at these baskets, can you imagine the weaving, gee,
all of these are Charles Banks Wilson. Some of them are lithographs. And, his daughter came in and was telling me the story of how he created those lithographs.
Now you say these are Charles Banks Wilson here on the left? Or
All of these are Charles Banks Wilson right through here. All of these.
this is a lot like,
That's a Fred Deaver,
this is neat.
Carol Riley. Carol Riley's been on display at the Smithsonian because of her many artworks dedicated to the mining era.
Well, I remember those pictures. There's not many of them left
Oh,
at all
now Carol
now.
Riley isn't some of her stuff at the Galena Museum. It's the
She
same-
is.
it
She was
looks
a
the
Galena
same style.
native.
Yeah, that's what I saw, a whole lot of those up there.
She was a Galena native, and we've got several pieces of her stuff. Now, mining wasn't her only art form, but it was the one that she was most known for. I've got one in my office that's a seascape of hers.
Well, she did a real fine thing just preserving the,
Well, this,
these mines that she's done, you don't see them anywhere else.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah. And like I said, we've got several of hers, several Charles Banks Wilsons. We've got some Fred Deavers. This gentleman, Paul Gregg. So Paul Gregg was born during the Cowtown era of Baxter Springs, during its heyday. And he went on to be a cartoonist in St. Louis. And then he ended up at the Denver Post. And as a cartoonist, which we now call an illustrator. And so they didn't have, pictures that they would put in papers, but they would have illustrations. And then these are two of his works.
That's very good, from what I've seen of cartoonists, they're not primarily artists,
Well,
in terms of
this,
what they.
look at this one, I mean, this is.
From the Red Hand Society, yes.
This is very good.
So this one, and this one are all in tribute to the Nez Perce Nation. And
Good.
this one,
Chief Joseph, one of my favorite folks.
yeah.
I shall fight no more forever.
Yeah. And because most people don't associate the Modoc or the Nez Perce with Baxter Springs or with Oklahoma Territory, and yet both of these nations, which are northern nations from the Northwest, were relocated via train to Baxter Springs on into Oklahoma Territory.
This is quite some glass work.
We do have a little bit of everything.
My goodness.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
So fire pole out of the original fire department building.
There's your rifles right there.
That is a collection from pretty much one family. They're kept under lock, key, and camera.
Well, that's a good place for them.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, they got
But-
your transportation here.
But each one of these is a representative of the nations that you see in this area that have a story with Baxter Springs. And we
Well-
start off with the Osage Nation, and then we move around in the timeline as to how they were
Well,
relocated
yeah,
to
you
here.
get in looking into these cases and looking down, there's a lot.
Oh, there's a lot more
see.
to the story.
Well, how
and-
about the headdress? Did that come from anywhere special, or was that just,
A gentleman who has some, his family has other items in here, he brought it in.
I'll be darned.
Yes.
I remember they used to have the Indian school down in Oklahoma. I remember
At Wyandotte.
Yeah, we went down there on a tour from our one-room
So we've got
schoolhouse.
we've got some pictures over here of the Wyandotte School. Seneca Indian School Band at Wyandotte, Oklahoma, right here. You know, some of the classroom work. The Quapaw Boarding School, which was another school there. But we've got the Osage, the Cherokee, the Eastern Shawnee, the Quapaw, the Peoria. You know, so we've got all of these Indian nations that were relocated into this area, and they have a history with Baxter Springs, Cherokee County.
Projectile points, Dave. These aren't arrowheads. These are projectile points. I've heard that before. You know, that's the technical. But look at all the Steveny Christmas. They got a lot of those over at Schumerhorn.
Most people have an issue with pronouncing it because they lose that R in the first,
I always called it Shimmerhorn.
and most people do, like something shimmers.
Yeah.
But it's Schermerhorn because
Schermerhorn.
he was of, German descent.
And I didn't know that the state of Kansas had taken over and was,
So the city still owns the property,
okay, but the state's operating it.
but the state is operating the nature center portion of it
That's good.
because it is still a city park.
Oh, wow, look at this here.
Our folk art. Now this was from a local artist, and you have to look really close to see what he's utilizing to create that.
I'm guessing walnut shells.
Well, he's got some walnut shells in here as part of the display, but like these are all created out of peach pits.
Really? Yeah, I guess when you start looking, yeah, you
Three
could.
pitch pictures
And
together
this-
makes us,
So that is just the
Yeah.
the ultimate in kitsch that folk art displays.
Now the
Americana.
Exactly.
wooden tree chain, that is downstairs.
It's downstairs.
That, I remember that. I can imagine that guy whittling, and it's all one piece.
Yes.
Oh, that's neat. A lot of nice
Let's
things.
go on downstairs. There go Will Rogers.
We're waiting on you. You keep stopping and bringing us back. Well, you and don't take it lightly.
So this room is the lower floor of the original building. We've got a display of a 1930s kitchen here. And you start looking in there and it's like, I remember that. And Grandma had that and Mom had that. And
Exactly what I was
so
thinking.
I've kind of nicknamed this area, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the old air conditioner in the corner.
You're gonna have to rename it pretty soon, because there's not many left that do remember it.
I count my generation as one of the last generation to remember this. You know, born in the 60s, a child of the 70s.
I was
You know,
born in the 40s, child of the 50s and 60s, and
You know, so
there's a
you
lot of memories here.
know, you're
Wow. You've got something here, kid.
we do. And I'm so lucky that I got chosen to be the caretaker of all of this and to share
Well, I'm
this history
glad
and learn it.
that you're doing it, because you've really enlightened us,
Miner's
me.
Ice.
Yeah, that's still open in Joplin, the Miners Ice Company. They used
It's under a different ownership.
to out there on this side of town, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's Oklahoma Ice Company
Yeah,
now.
they go back a long time. Oh yeah,
Yeah, but we've got different types of washboards and washing machines
I
and
remember that one.
yes. So did you know that when you look at washboards, you will see washboards made out of metal, made out of glass, and made out of wood. And each one is a different utility purpose.
I didn't know that. No, I
Like your glass ones were used for your delicate fabrics.
They were
what was a
smooth.
wooden
They
one
were-
for?
Very smooth, the
Well,
glass.
so the rougher the washboard, the heavier the product that it was to use
Okay.
on.
It beats the rocks on the
Yes.
riverbank.
Yes,
Look at these. Oh boy.
Mary,
I am.
I'm Chris. I called you yesterday.
Hello, Chris. Welcome.
Mining History Association.
Yes, yes.
I've been here before. I just love your mining exhibit. I know y'all have an amazing photograph.
We do in our storage facility in our research room.
Isn't it most of it digitized also?
There is a lot of it that is digitized.
Well, this is something. My mother had a just like that Maytag, only it came with a gas engine on it. And when they got electricity, they put an electric motor on it. And this has been converted. But
So
it had
this is an original washing machine.
It is.
You put clothes in that middle thing, put water in the tub, put clothes in that basket with the holes in it,
Yes.
and then they bring it out and wring it through the wringer on the way out to get it to where they hang it on a line.
Well, see, so water's down in this tub here, and it's constantly straining the water over with all of the holes.
And
Sure.
what run it? Was it cranked or has it got a motor on
It's
it?
got a motor underneath.
Oh, okay.
Now, when y'all were boys, did you break into the pie safe?
I remember my grandmother had one of those. Boy, they got a lot of nice stuff down here.
Yeah, and
Is that
so
a hot water heater over there?
it is.
It's just a,
And so we've got a 1910 farmhouse, kind of illustrate how families lived at that point in time. This is our second pump organ here that I told you we
oh
had.
my.
Got the enamel cook stove in there.
Shotgun on the wall.
Of course there was, as well as a Bible open.
Oh yeah.
Well, this
There's
rocking clothes washer. I've never seen one.
We got two of them that actually would rock it. This one would be a handle, and that one the entire machine.
that's when
would
the
rock.
kids got old enough. Now you can eat whatever comes
So-
through this slot.
This particular jail cell
That might be.
was from the GAR
me.
reunions. And so remember I told you they had the rail spur and everything doused down there? Well, they had a timeout corner.
Hello.
Had a little too much tea in the afternoon, caused a little bit of ruckus.
Pretty good. Pretty
Larry.
good.
That was the extent of it. That's the
So this was a portable jail. It was set up for the GARs. It was not the city jail. And then after the GAR retired their reunions in 1914, it became city property. And it bounced around for
Outstanding.
several
That'll be
decades.
great.
Ended up
Just,
in
if you'd have them call me
Joplin
when they head
at
that way, I'll
a,
make sure I'm there, and we'll
salvage
have
yard.
the
But
museum
the owner of the
open if
salvage
they
yard
need to
knew
use
its
the restroom or
history.
need something cold to drink.
And when the building here opened in '79, the Historical Society was contacted shortly after that. This was acquired and relocated. They had to do some repairs because it had been sitting outside for several decades. And it's been inside ever since.
So
Well, yeah, it looks real good.
the Grand Army of the Republic.
That
would
sounds
have
like a
these
plan to
reunions
me. I
and
really
some guys
appreciate the
would
help
come
because
in
we
and
can
they have
sure
this
use it.
It's so
Yes.
funny.
So
And, you
they
know, they
had
may be
GAR
able to just,
reunions
you
here in
know,
Baxter
hook-
Springs from
You know,
1883
they may be able
to
to shove it back in the ground with a
1914.
backhoe bucket,
And they
but
were
they'll
on the
know more
south edge
about
of
it when they
town
look at it.
at Camp Logan, which was property acquired by the GAR. Had their own rail spurs, had their own tent city during the reunions, and upwards of 50,000 people would attend these reunions.
There's a nice history of it on the
So
first
these
floor
were
up
the
there.
Union guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do it,
And
and
what's
thank
fun
you
is
once
that
again.
some of the companies that grew during that era,
Goodbye.
such as Coglizer Tent, which is still a tent company that you see in the Joplin area, was a big part of the reunions because it was them that they leased all the tents from. Yeah. But this way we have our boardwalk, which represents businesses that you would have seen in Baxter Springs in the 1870s. such as a saddle shop, a barber shop.
And all this stuff, mostly donations and on loan?
Yes, exactly. Mr. Opperman, who actually ran the shop for years, this is part of his collection. This is,
Hey, there's the original barber post.
yes, and the
Wooden Indian.
wooden Indian, and it was carved by a member of the Quapaw Nation. Ivan
All
Crane
the
created
lines
that.
Red and white?
I know they used to do bleeding and stuff.
That's right,
and-
because often they were with dentists and
Yeah, they did a little bit of
rags
everything.
They used, and they'd hang out the rags outside.
Yeah, up.
Yeah. So our blacksmith shop is here. Mr. Norman Hurt, who had the last blacksmith shop here in town, was tasked with doing some repairs on the cannon that is up front. And at that point in time, the cannon sat in front of the public library. And one of the repairs he did was to install new wheels on it. So he took the old wheels off of it that were from when the cannon was created in 1863, but he kept them. So this wheel here and its matching component over here are the original wheels that were off the cannon from 1863.
Well, I'm glad he had the foresight to do that.
Yeah, he put them up. He put them up in the loft of his shop, and they were found when they closed the shop, and they were going to tear the building down. So, tribute to a general store of that era. Got a light out.
Oh my, yeah. LED lights.
Yes, we've converted all of our lights to LED.
Yeah, you got to get rid of those fluorescents.
So over here we've got, so we had the 1910 farmhouse. Well, over here we've got the barnyard and all of the tools that would have been used and stored in the barn at that point in time.
That's back when it was. work.
We've got grinders. We've, old-fashioned grinder here. The sharpeners there, the cream separator, milk cans,
Devil's rope.
devil's rope. Yeah, exactly.
Man, that's quite a collection.
Oh, wow, look at this. This is a cedar here. Looks like to me, you got your 2-bucket cedar right there.
Yeah, planter.
See two
Two rows of
at a time.
corn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sit there behind the horse.
Absolutely. We've-
Yeah, just
yeah.
the flies that was kept away by the horse's tail.
So we'll finish up right here, and then we'll go on to the next stream on this
Oh, there's
tour.
my chain.
This is your chain here.
Oh, tell
Gentleman
me
who carved this was from over near Riverton, and he ended up on Johnny Carson with this. This chain is, world's longest hand-carved wooden chain, per Ripley's Believe It or Not.
And he even put a ball and chain on the end. But supposedly that tree blew over, and he just started whittling.
Exactly.
And
Chunk of wood, and run out of a chunk of wood, put another chunk
now
of wood.
I didn't remember right away, but yeah, I remember that. That he took it out of one piece of wood out of a tree and he
that's-
just carved all of it.
yeah, this is unbroken. This is not apart
What-
anywhere.
Do you know
He
say what kind of wood it was?
I think it was-
It does not.
seemed to me like it was. I can't remember.
Well, and Carson was known to be very cantankerous. Mm-hmm. If he didn't enjoy you being on his show,
Yeah,
it got cut short.
Yep.
Commercial break, whatever.
Yeah.
He spent 22 minutes visiting with this guy. So just that in
I
itself,
hate to say it, but I remember the show.
just
I do too. And,
just-
and when Carson liked somebody, he'd always be going, wow.
yeah, basswood,
Wow.
basswood there.
Basswood. It's basswood. You was asking.
So a quarter of a mile long.
Oh my goodness.
I wouldn't want to pack it up and take it to.
But I mean,
What's this here?
so that is a Hercules 3-horsepower gasoline engine, but it's water cooled, and it was one of the first water cooled engines of its time. Gasoline engines were coming on the market. They were perfecting them because before that you had coal and steam powered engines, but here we've got a gasoline engine, and it's water cooled to allow you to use it longer. And so it's very early in its time frame.
And you kept pouring water in it. As it boiled off, you'd add more water. Just-
Exactly.
You didn't want to forget.
And it was all about keeping the engine cool enough so that it could continuously run.
Yes.
So we got the bedroom for our homestead here. And then we're through in this room, and we'll move on back to the mining gallery room.
All right.
So here we have our mining gallery rooms.
Do you buy any tags along, Mary?
You certainly come and join our group.
I'm a mining historian.
Are you? Well, I used to
This is
work
why
in.
I'm
If
here.
you're gonna speak, try and get next to one of them or close to them so we pick it up on the mics.
Yep.
So we have two areas here in our mining gallery room. One we've kind of dedicated to the picture collection, some of the story of picture, some specific things about picture in the area. And this one is the tri-state area and mining in general.
Yeah, unfortunately, picture no longer exists. because
Not
it
in the
was-
way it was when I was a kid
Yeah,
even,
me
let alone
either.
when you guys were kids. You know,
Yeah. Hazardous waste site.
it is, you know,
Yeah,
it is
Superfund
it
site.
is the largest
Yep.
EPA Superfund site in the United States. Unfortunately, it is not the only lead and zinc Superfund site in the United States.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it is not. So we've got some, diorama type displays of different mines and their mining derricks. We've got a large scale mural of part of the central mill here.
Oh, that's a big.
And different
Big
mining
waterfall.
pictures and different, shaft heights. I mean, look at the depth of the shaft on this, and they were going up on these ladders. Look at how tall they were. I mean, and some of these, caverns were 400 foot tall, and they were putting ladders together and climbing to the top to, take axes and such to the top of these and gouge out stuff.
I knew a gentleman, his name was Cubal Cassell, and he was a scaler or a
A
trimmer.
roof trimmer, yeah.
He said that's what he started out. There was four of those together. They was tied together, and he'd go up, and you held yourself with a bar in this hand, and you was looking for loose rock. And when you'd hit something, there was guys down here with ropes, and the rock started falling. They'd leave naturally, and you was up there.
You was just hanging on.
And he said they got an opening for a shoveler
Yeah.
in about 2 weeks, and he got on that, and he said he never looked back from
So,
that.
so here's a listing of some of the jobs that you had as an employee of the mines. Roof trimmer was obviously one. And they were very, very common names. You've got roof trimmer, tub hooker, and the tub hooker literally just did that. They would hook tubs up, and then the hoistermen would bring those tubs to the surface.
There's a screen ape.
And the screen ape literally shoved rocks over onto the metal screens to be pounded down and to broke down into
Oh,
smaller
they had to
pieces.
be smaller than those grates to
They had to
get
go-
into
Yeah.
the machine that crushed them good.
Yes, and there's another picture of some of the screen apes working there.
I had-
Screen apes.
Yeah, they was big guys. I had the opportunity when I was going to vocational school in Pittsburgh back in the 60s. Our class went down into a mine. It was working mine. And this guy, he was big. He'd jump out there with that one hand. Well, he had a sledge in each hammer in hand. And he knew right where to hit those rocks.
I mean, and
but-
if you look off in the distance of this mural, look at all of the different mine shafts, the housing that's around them. I mean, this was just a very common occurrence back in the heyday of the mining era.
And this is picture.
Yes.
This is a central mill. When you look
Yeah,
back
well,
from
which
the
is
highway,
actually set off. It's between Pitcher and Quapaw.
yeah, and you're looking back towards Commerce is in that direction.
Now, this mural over here is Pitcher, Oklahoma, on this side. And this is dedicated to the history of Pitcher, the 1984 famous football team that won state. But like here, we've got Main Street illustrated. And then if you look on the skyline through all of that, all of those lines are dedicated to a different mine, and it's naming off where all of those mines are in relation to Main Street.
I remember going down in the mine in this. Me and
In a
three other
safety
guys.
can.
And we was coming up, and I was the first group up, And I told the hoistman, said, hey, can I go back down again? He said, you like riding up and down? And he was sitting there smoking a pipe. And he waited for this thing to spin around. I was looking at him, and he kicks the brake off, and the last thing I see, he's walking away. And this thing's going down, but probably 200 or 300 feet at least. And I was, in my mind, all I seen was his face and walking away. And he set that down right like that. And I waited the last one up, and he was waiting. He said, hey, Sonny, you want another ride? I said, I've had enough, thank you.
Oh, that's bad.
What's crazy is that those were designed to hold up to 4 men.
Yeah, we had 4 students in here. Well, they was 20-year-olds, I guess. And you sat right in there, hooked the chain, and down you went. And I mean, you went down. I swear I saw that cable go down here and then back up.
You might have.
But they had a working mind, and and they turned all the lights off for us. You talk about, after a while, you don't know whether you're standing straight or leaning. But
You know what's interesting is in those mines, it was usually the guys that have been around forever that would fall into a shaft because they thought they knew where they were all the time.
familiarity
It was
breeds
guys
contempt.
like you that went into students, you
Yep.
were very careful.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of those piles are still up down there. When you drive down the highway through Pitcher, you see all those piles still.
A lot of them.
Well, no, a lot of them are gone. Some of those
A
up
lo-
on North Main are not as much, but down south of town. a lot.
So they are not there in the same respect as they were in the 1960s and the 1970s. A lot of the projects that the EPA has worked on has been in reclaiming that, washing it and utilizing it and decontaminating it to be used elsewhere to get it out of this area.
Every county road in Cherokee and Crawford County has got probably
And,
6,
in
8
Ottawa.
inches of that on it.
Well, every county road,
Yep,
every school building,
yep.
has,
Parking lot.
has,
They just-
yeah.
Now, the chat is no longer has lead, so it's
Well,
not-
there's a lot of it mixed
No,
in with it.
actually it does.
That's where the problem is.
That is the problem that they've discovered is that the
leaches out into the water.
it has lead dust on it from the crushing procedure that, like the screen apes, they got to crush these rocks down. And what's left that's not utilized through the smelter is the chat, but it still has covered with all of this dust. And then it was put up in these piles. Rainwater leached off of them. You've got holding ponds that are full of dust and lead contaminants.
And the wind blowing the dust.
Wind blowing the dust everywhere. And, the dust, the chat being utilized as base material in roads, in schools, in, parking lots. And so you've spread this lead contamination all over the tri-state area. And so this is what the EPA is trying to combat now, as well as the contaminated groundwater levels.
I
So-
think they even did a study and found that horses downwind
Yeah, there was a lot.
contaminated, whereas upwind.
My last job,
Where do you want to go next?
Well, so over here is the Tri-State Gallery. And if you look around the room, we've got several maps, aerial maps, such as this one, which is created by the Eagle Pitcher Smelting Company in 1944. And this shows the mine openings. These are actual underground mining, all of this yellow. And here we are in Baxter Springs here. And, we've got the state line right here, which is the south edge of town. But you also where you can see where different people own different. So the Hartley, the Swally families, Brewster here, Dobson here. And many of these families still have descendants in the area. But this shows a lot of the underground mining.
our office, the state mining office, we were more or less involved with the reclamation of a lot of these mine sites. And I did the coal mining, but the rest of the office, we were very involved with the lead and zinc problems.
And there's a tremendous amount to that story. The EPA is still on site
Oh yeah,
trying to do what they can to keep proceeding in a forward fashion in cleaning these areas. And they're working very, very hardly, especially in Ottawa County, with the Quapaw Nation. because many of these properties, this round pitcher, trees, and that sort of thing, were part of the Quapaw Reservation originally, and they've reverted back to the Quapaw Nation as far as physical ownership of the land. And so we've got, different mine pictures. The safety pictures were very common every few months at all of the mines, so we've got different pictures of those. We've got some examples of some of the ores from the area, examples of hard hats and early mining equipment. Most people don't know this, that hard hats were not common in mines until after World War I, when many men brought their World War I helmets home and used them in the mines. They modified them with, different lighting sources to use in the mines instead of the cloth-covered leather hats.
This is neat. You've got all these pictures, but like most places, you probably don't have a whole lot of names to go with them.
We don't, and this is what this is for. If somebody sees a picture and they know who's in it and they're not listed, they can add it to this list.
Oh, okay, good. That's a good project.
Oh, do you have they had, when they had the museum in Pitcher, I stopped in there quite a bit, and they had a deal that they treated miners' consumption with. It was the worst thing that they ever did. But
We have that.
you'd got it. And what they do, these miners, deep miners, would go, they was going up to the aluminum areas where they was doing other kind of mining, and they noticed their breathing problems kind of went away. And they attribute, well, it's aluminum dust. They had this machine, you would put this mask on, and that agitated this aluminum dust, and you took treatments, you breathe that dust. It probably killed more than the others.
Yeah, we have the machine, and we have examples of the aluminum dust.
Outstanding. That'll be neat to go look at.
Yeah,
So
it was
there-
over in the other room.
There was a museum in Pitcher?
Uh-huh.
There
I'm assuming
was.
It's no longer.
No, it
No,
is
it's
not.
long
During the buyout period, they knew that the town was going out, and the caretakers of the museum, they reached out to some places, and this museum was chosen to receive the majority of the things that they had available to give away and to rehome, and we created space here for it. The problem with that is that we did not have room for everything. So anything that is of a sortable legal nature, such as documents and that sort of thing, is at Pittsburgh at the Axe Library in climate controlled conditions with professional people
And
to
they're
regulate all of
available.
that.
If you want to go look
Yeah.
at them, you can.
Just go look ask to see the Baxter Springs collection
I want to see
Where
that
is
thing
that?
over there.
at
This
Pittsburgh
thing over
State
here.
University.
Okay, Pittsburgh State.
Make some mules up and down.
We may be having.
I've never seen one of these anywhere else.
Okay.
3 years.
And
Okay.
this is a boat to take a mule
Okay.
into and out of the mine.
We're almost
This
through with this
sling.
tour.
This sling, when you put it on a mule and carry the mule down and carry it back up.
Well, unfortunately, most of the time it was a one-way trip.
Yep.
Oh, once they put them down, they didn't bring them back?
A lot of times they had, barn-type rooms downstairs that they kept them
Sure,
in.
they had stables.
And if they brought them back up, a lot of times it was because they had deceased.
Huh.
But we do have a picture here. It shows one actually being lowered.
Yeah, how'd you like to put that on a mule?
Well, I mean, it's a little heavier duty.
I'm doing some research on something totally out of mining history, and it's involving Pea Ridge and the battle and people who lived up there. And in the records, tax records, you wouldn't believe it, but a mule was more valuable than a horse,
Yeah, what that?
and even more valuable than a cow. Like a pig would be like $2, a cow 15, a horse 100 to 150, and a mule 150 to 200,
Do you know why?
because they're
Making
doing all the
money.
work.
So the endurance of a mule is twice that of a horse.
So they can work a lot.
So they can work a lot longer. They have a stronger pull on them than a horse does, which is,
It's like a piece of machinery today, right?
yeah,
So that explains it.
yeah. They had a greater endurance.
But
And
now-
especially, so the term Missouri mule was a thing because, you know, there were a lot of mules bred in the state of Missouri and they were bred out of good stock.
But today, a mule versus a big fat cow,
Depends.
we're gonna pay more for the cow.
Exactly, because
it's
times
the
have changed.
market and, yeah.
That's
Now, we use automobiles or trucks or tractors.
But you still find areas in this area, especially where people are breeding mules specifically to continuation of farming with animals. You know, they've got special machinery, as well as hunters utilize mules more than they do horses when they go on extended hunts, such as in, you know, Wyoming and the Upper Rockies.
What did you say that is, Larry? Is that a winch?
Yes, that's one of their hoister, you know, that literally put the cans in and out of the mine. But
And here's one of these drills. This is a pneumatic run by air.
you know, it probably was. It looks like theirs where the air
lines
fitting was.
coming on it. And
But-
that's a bit there at the other end, and
But the
and
one,
thing here to screw it in, keep the pressure on it. So it
right,
can go
and
in.
one thing that you don't see on this is an older one. There's no place for water to alleviate the spray, so that's a good. A driller his life expectancy wasn't very long because of the dust.
And there's that dynamite up there. They drill a hole, put a stick of dynamite in there, and they do their blows at lunchtime or at the end of the day. Yeah?
Usually at night when there's no one in the mine.
So that the dust gets settled before they get back down.
Well, that and the chance of it causing a cave-in, less miners would die from it. You know, so it lessened the.
What'd you call the guy that goes and lights the dynamite?
Just a shot fire in the coal
Yeah,
mine.
shot fire. Yeah.
My dad was a shot fire in the coal
And
mine.
there's the bottom over there. That's where the hoist is, hooked up to that bucket.
And they'd take that right up, and that man hoist would go up and down that too. But they usually had a couple places where they was taking the ore out. The main shaft was bigger because they could put equipment and stuff down it, and it didn't take near as big a hole to put the ore in and out of it.
And so over here you have the tabs that each miner had their own tabs in there, and when they cleared a bucket they would put their tab in it so when it got to the top they could be credited for that, you know, so they, you know, literally earn their pay off of those tabs. So we do have that sorting station there.
Yeah, just going down in it.
Mary, we're about to wrap up here because my battery's gone.
Yep.
Well,
we're
we'll
done.
just do a quick walk through, about 30 seconds or so,
Yeah.
and finish up.
We can do that. We can do that.
So here we have a secondary boardwalk, including a newspaper office, a doctor's office, a dentist office, and a telephone switchboard.
Wow.
So this would be, you know, your typical things that you would see circa 1940 to
Like your
1960.
brick
Here's
side.
another one of your hairstyling deals,
Yep.
Larry.
Brick sidewalk too.
So the electronic process to do a perm was very dangerous.
Yeah, it looked like a good way to get electrocuted.
I mean, that literally is where the terminology frying your hair comes from.
you don't have any do not spit on the sidewalk bricks.
Not on here, we do not.
Well, you do have something to do with printing down here.
I told you I had a typeset.
What is that big, is that what that big thing is?
So that is a printing press. We've got the typeset over here in front with all of the blades here, and then the printing press itself in the background.
Well, I mean, in my experience of looking through these museums, between the automobile, the sewing machine, and the printing press, that's where technology developed for most of our machinery.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, gears and cogs and all of that.
There's a weir brick right here.
Oh, there we go.
So we had a gentleman and his wife, members of the Brewster family, which is quite common during the mining era, that they collected bricks. And so we've got several bricks. We've got a whole wall of bricks on the other side that is labeled with all the different places they collected bricks
There's a
from.
lot of people collect them.
This Western Union.
A little heavy to carry around.
Yeah, that's probably 50s stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not really.
Mary?
Some more of our mining stuff here. We've got dioramas all over the place that illustrate what a mining camp would look like.
A lot of minerals.
Yes. We've got a 1920s photograph of the area. We've got Douthit, Pitcher, Carden, Treese, Baxter Springs over here. This is an aerial photograph from the 1920s.
And you can see the chat piles. These are all chat piles.
Yes.
Oh, a nice, well, that's not nice.
Yep, this was, they did produce and such back and forth through the area. This is the brick collection. We have a rock and mineral collection here. So this fun little brick here I use in all of my youth scavenger hunts. I ask them, what does Wagner IT stand for? They never get it. They never get it. I have stumped school teachers. I have stumped so many people. They have no idea what Wagner IT means.
Something tile.
Nope.
Doesn't have anything to do with
Indian
tile.
territory?
Correct. You are the first person in 4 years to get IT means Indian
good for
territory.
you.
That's what happens when you're a historian.
Yes. I've stumped history school teachers with
I
it.
see it though in my research.
Yes.
Now, Mary, I want to take it just a minute. We're right at the end here. We've got a fire truck, a couple things. I
Yeah.
want you to take just a little bit here and invite people to come see you.
Yeah, I'll get in here with you. Come on.
We are a fabulous museum, as you can see from this video. We have so much history to share, and we just invite everybody to come in and see us. We are open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Sundays 1 to 4, closed on Mondays. But if you call me and you're in the area and you're absolutely not going to be back here for several years, call and make an appointment, and I'll see what I can do.
And they can find you on Google Maps.
They can find us on Google Maps, Facebook. Our webpage is www.baxterspringsmuseum.org, and same place on the email, baxterspringsmuseum@outlook.com.
Thank you for being so generous with your time and coming and talking to us. It's more than I can take in all at once. It's amazing.
We are a bit overwhelming. We
Yes.
are a bit
Yes,
overwhelming, and
That's
just
the
because
word I was looking for.
we traverse so much history in, with 20,000 square foot, you can.
We're going out to take a look at the cemetery now. See where
Absolutely.
These
We've got
soldiers
we've got driving tour that goes with the cemetery tour.
We have a conference.
So our
Okay.
research
Current
facility, we
Okay,
also have a
really?
research facility
Well,
here.
that's neat to know. I spent
That
25
for those
years working
that need
for the
help,
surface
we do a
mining
little bit of
section.
genealogy, we do some
remediating.
research on the area,
Yeah, we did.
Serious
we're
studies
still
goes
doing
on.
serious
recreation.
studies.
Oh, this is
The photographs from the picture collection are housed in
So
here.
this is the museum and this is the history library.
This is our library area, and
That's right.
we anything that's done in here is done by appointment, so we do ask that you call prior to coming. Give us a few days to make sure that there's people on hand to help you.
I emphasize
Thank you very much.